Thanks, Ben, for joining us. So just to give you a very quick introduction, you're the CEO of Dartmoor Zoological Park. You're the author of We Bought a Zoo, which was also made into a big film with Matt Damon and Scarlett Johansson, posters over there. You're also a journalist, and you studied your degree in psychology and a master's in science journalism. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If you could just wrap up and just give us those sort of major headlines that kind of bring us up to date.
Okay. Well, in about 2006, my family was looking for a large rundown house to house my mum and probably my brother and sister and all their children, to have 3 generations in one house. And the details, estate agent's details, came through the post thick and fast, and we got the details for this place, which was 13 bedrooms, very run down, huge garden. But in that garden were lions, tigers, bears, wolves, flamingos, tapirs, and all this. And we just thought this was insane, but we couldn't let it go, and we decided to come and visit to rule it out, which is a huge mistake, because as soon as you arrive, you realise that it's fixable. It was just about to close, and the old owner was very reluctant to let it go, but he had to let it go. And cut a very long story short, after about 6 months of very fraught negotiation, during which time the zoo did close, we ended up taking it over. And if we hadn't bought it ourselves as a family, it would have been turned into a nursing home and all the animals dispersed, and that was our sort of main incentive, was to save those animals. Which we did, and we knew it would be harder than we thought, and it was. It stretched us way beyond what we thought. I wrote a book about it, and as a journalist, nothing's real unless you write it down. So I wrote it down, thought little of it, and the book did ridiculously well and got made into this Hollywood movie, which actually saved the zoo. The zoo's been on a knife edge over the last decade, really, until I turned it into a charity about 4 years ago. But it was our passion for animals, my background in animal intelligence and animal research that sort of motivated us. And I always hoped that we could, as well as rescuing these existing animals, turn it into a viable conservation zoo, because in the past its record was very poor in terms of breeding important species responsibly. And also hopefully get some large primates and sit and play with them all day and pretend that was work. That's the kind of long-term objective.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, and you've been going, is it 13 years now since?
I believe it is, yeah. It's been a very long time.
Wow, has it gone quickly?
Yeah, I had a full head of hair at the beginning. It's astonishing to think that it's been that long. My children have gone from 6 and 4 to 16 and 18 over that time, and this has been their life, and we still haven't got a proper house. The house inside is almost like a temporary building site the whole time, because all the money goes outside. And I keep thinking, we'll fix that next year or this year, But as a project, the outside, the zoo itself is amazing achievements in the education sphere and the research department. There's got some published articles. We take a lot of students who do placement years with us, and we teach a level 3 diploma on site. And probably one of my proudest things is the well-being work that we do here through nature therapy, because there's a tremendous benefit to just volunteering. Generally is good for mental health, but volunteering outside is particularly good in a constructive environment. And it's the plants and the air. It's called biophilia, where the effect of nature on people. And you add in animals, and particularly predators looking at you through the trees. That's something that kind of wakes up the animal in you, and works really well with ex-service people with post-traumatic stress. We found a very difficult cohort to reach, and we get them here. They're still not interested. They don't trust you unless you've been through what they have, which obviously limits the number of people who can help them. Until you put them in front of a lion, and suddenly they're like, "Whoa, a lion! Whoa!" And they're awake again, and they're looking at you in the eye, like, "Whoa!" asking about the lion. And then you say, "Okay, fine. We're going to put the lion in the house, and then we're going to go in and stand where the lion was standing to dig a trench for a new platform." And they're like, "Is it safe?" I said, yeah, it's safe. And they go, really? You know, and they're looking at each other, and they're a team again in a high adrenaline situation, which is what they love. And they go in and they're kind of looking over their shoulder at the door the whole time, but they do the work, which is physical and challenging, and they push themselves more than they would in the gym at the base. And by the end of the day, they've had a high adrenaline teamwork exercise. They're tired, they're happy, they've done something constructive, and then they're bored, so they go and talk to the shrink. And we found a big spike in what they call breakthrough conversations after working here. And this is something we're trying to get the Ministry of Defence to agree to accredit as a designated therapeutic activity, so they can be ordered to do it. Because at the moment you say, do you want to go to the zoo? And they go, no. Yeah. Come on, you know. If you say, right, we're all off, come on, attention, then they'll do it, and it'd be good for them. And then also you can roll it out to other zoos. Anyone with large carnivores needs maintenance. These guys are really good at that stuff, and it will benefit all of the service guides and all of the captive animals. So that's a novel, interesting thing I wasn't expecting when we got the zoo.
To bring you round to the reason why we're here, this theory about big cats living in the UK, which I find so strange. Some places it almost seems common knowledge, and then you go to London and everyone thinks you're barking mad. So one thing I wanted to mention is that in your book you discuss seeing a puma. Can you just run me through that experience?
Yeah, well, it was in our first week of being here, and it was a huge adjustment for us to be here at all. You know, it was crazy place it seemed, with just a big learning curve. I think on our fourth day, the jaguar had been let out by keeper error, which really spiked my adrenaline level. And luckily, he jumped into the tiger enclosure, and no animal or person was hurt, but we were really on edge about this. And there was a lot of talk of animal rights people cutting fences in those days, because this place was targeted for its poor husbandry standards. And I believe they had cut some fences and let some deer out, although the deer didn't want to go out, but they'd done the thing. Yeah. And on our seventh day, I believe it was, I brought my brother Duncan back from the station at midnight with his business partner. So there's two guys in suits and me in a car in Sparkwell driving through the village. And as we're coming through the very narrow lanes with sort of steep Devon walls on either side, I saw this animal appear across the road. Just saw the chest and head. And first glance, I thought it was a deer maybe about to jump, and deer are silly enough to jump in front of a car, so I stopped to wait. And that gave us the chance to have a second look. And during that time, because basically this is why most big cat sightings are probably false, because people take one look and they imagine that your brain fills in the blank, and that's exactly how your visual system works. You build up a rough sketch of what the thing is in front of you, and then your brain says, oh, it's a bloke with a beard and a mic, whatever. And in a lot of people's cases, you're much more likely also to imagine it's something dangerous because of the way we evolved. So, a bundle of fluff on the ground, it's a spider. No, it's not, it's a bundle of fluff, because you have a second look. And in this instance, I thought it was a deer because there are lots of deer around. And I looked at it, and in that 2 or 3 seconds of the second glance, it kind of transformed from this template I had in my mind of a deer into this puma, like this, like muscles, big, bulgy jaws. And it just looked across at us like this. And I just thought, someone's let the puma out now. That's really bad. And we all simultaneously swore and said the word puma, and then it just kind of like retreated back into the woods, and we're just like, what did we do? And then we got out of the car and we went to have a look, and you could hear it padding off, not clip-clopping like a deer, it was a soft padding off. I thought, well, do we chase a puma in the dark in the woods in suits, or we have never been here before, or do we go back to the zoo and see what the damage is? So we came piling back up here, got the torches, shone it on the puma enclosure, because we had 2 puma here at the time. Both pumas were in, and both pumas were exactly the same animal that we'd just seen, but smaller, the females. And there's a sort of dusty reddish brown to a puma. It was not like a deer, and that was exactly what we'd just seen, quite clearly for several seconds. And what we think we saw was a young male, maybe 3 or between 3 and 10, 3 and 8 in its prime. and the two girls that we had were much smaller. And I just thought, I've brought two little children to this place, and there are wild pumas in the village. What's going on? So in the morning, I said to the keepers, you'll think we're mad, which they already did, but I think I saw a puma last night out in the village. And they went, oh, yeah, there's a puma out here. Grandad let him out. It's like, what? And apparently, there are lots of different stories, and I've been in trouble for this before, but I'm very happy to repeat it. Apparently, there are two different versions of the previous owner here letting out 3 pumas. One story is that he housed them in a farm that he used to own just next door, which is inappropriate. It's inside the house, and one day he went in there and they were gone. Yeah. And he didn't tell the authorities because he was already in trouble with the authorities for overpopulating the zoo with other animals. And he went out on them. He said, "I'll get them." Went off on the moor with a gun, and obviously didn't find them. Yeah, sure. And the other story is that when the Plymouth Zoo closed in, I think it was 1978, 5 pumas were allocated to come here, and only 3 arrived, or 5 arrived, and 3 were perhaps deliberately released to rewild, effectively. And that's not such a far-fetched idea. And I've heard that story perhaps more than the other one. Of course, everybody shouts about, we wouldn't do that and it couldn't have been that. But I've heard a lot of people say that. And that was 2 females and a male, which is a viable breeding trio with the right conditions. And if it's Puma, they've got a huge range, which does include Montana, where there's snow and mountains, and right down into the south where there's hot desert sun. So very adaptable cats. Did a bit of talking around, obviously there are some paw print casts that were taken here with little dates on, and one supposedly from the fern garden here, which is kind of in the middle of the zoo. And the story was that the males would come to walk around the enclosure where the females were when they were calling. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. If you went in with the females, they would run off and hide, because even a large cat doesn't want to tackle a big ape like us. Predators prefer to hunt things that they can kill very easily. And I thought, well, I want to see one of these wild puma, so I'll wait. When the girls were calling, which is it's like a kind of strangled cat noise, it's sort of like this, and it's very easy to tell when they're calling. I thought I'll just hang out there for a few hours each night and see. And I remember being on the phone to a friend, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just hiding in the bushes, waiting for this puma to come." And she said, "Were you doing what?" I said, "Why don't you go inside now?" And I said, "I'd be fine. They wouldn't want to attack a human." And as I read about it more, and I read about the mountain bikers who were killed by male pumas in Montana. They'll ambush humans and drag them off their bikes. And thinking, there was one where the guy was dragged into a bush, and his buddy called the police, and they all came and surrounded the bush. They found the guy dead, and another body in there as well. And you're thinking, maybe I shouldn't be hiding in the bush here with this. And I did have a huge dog at the time, a Pyrenean mountain dog that's just not scared of anything. Only twice I ever saw him scared. Once, he was like 65 kilos, huge animal, built to take on wolves. Yep. And when we lived in France, he chased off after something which turned out to be a wild boar, and he came running back and stood behind me. And I really, I could show my torch, it was a boar, and we kind of tiptoed out. And one time here, he chased off into the bushes and came running back and stood behind me. And I thought, I'm going in now. So I never saw one here, but I'm 90%, maybe 95% sure I saw one in the village and with 2 other people. However, and all the farmers around, will tell you quietly off the record, "Oh, yeah, the puma, Nelly's had the place, there are always cats out." Yeah. And when we had our lynx escape on our 10th anniversary, it's only a little cat, but the local livestock behave in exactly the same way. They can smell it a mile off. And this is one of the things that one of my neighbours said is all her horses gathered in one place in the middle of the field. Just like the old days, she said, when the Puma was around. I'm like, really? And she said, don't worry, it makes it easier to pick up all the poo because it's all in one place. They're really good about it. It's like, oh, more cats, whatever.
Wow.